I did Model UN during high school, we were not allowed to use electronic devices, only except when we were doing unmoderated caucuses,
Mhm.
and when we were writing resolutions. Now, those kinds of bans, I think, are being lifted because we've come at a point where you can't conduct an actual Model UN conference without allowing students to use AI.
Mm. And
I
also
think,
tech,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Tech and AI. I think, on the benefit side, first of all, I think what AI allows people to do is
Welcome to MUN Deep Dive, episode 3. Today we have Dennis with us. Dennis, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
oh sure, why not? My name is Bonjune Kim. You can just call me Dennis. I did my undergrad at Georgetown University, majored in international politics, and then now I am doing my master's at Korea University at the Graduate School of International Studies. And regarding Model UN, I've done a lot of Model UN in the past. I think I've done so far around 70 conferences if
Hmm.
I just
Wow.
gather up everything. And even right now at the moment, I've been active in Model UN, doing chairing for one of the largest collegiate conference in Korea, given my master's student background. Right now, this year would be the last year I'll be able to participate as a student in any kind of Model UN conference, so I'm just trying to do my best at the last stage of being able to do anything related to Model UN.
So a decade plus, 70 conferences plus, very
Hmm.
extensive MUN
Hmm.
background. Now, I think what makes you very unique is a lot of students are involved with MUN at the international school level, but you went on to pursue MUN at the collegiate level as well. So
Hmm.
what was this always part of the plan? I mean, I know a lot of people want to do MUN, but then the level is higher. It's like college and high school sports, right? The level of MUN also gets to the next level. In what
Hmm.
ways did you prepare for that collegiate level of MUNing? And maybe tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. Well, I mean, when I went to Georgetown during my undergrad at the very start, when I was a freshman at Georgetown, there was a very active recruiting scene for collegiate Model UN, the Georgetown Model UN team. And although I wasn't able to finish my term there because of COVID, I had a very exciting experience, interesting experience, competing in collegiate Model UN and participating in the Model UNs hosted at Georgetown. So when I came back to Korea to do my graduate degree after I did my military service, I was like, why not? I'll try to participate in this Model UN conference, the Model African Union. Uh, and after I did it, I was pretty lucky. I went out with my like best friend,
Mhm.
who's actually also from Jeju, by the way, but not like the Jeju International Schools, but the Jeju Foreign Language High School. And we were lucky enough to win the grand prize, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs prize. And we were able to visit Ethiopia, the headquarters of the African Union. And right now I'm chairing for the conference. So we had this orientation session around 4 days ago. And right now we're preparing for the next conference.
It's interesting you mentioned how with Georgetown, there's that direct connection with the IR majors. I mean, there's actually a school, right, that's specifically
Hmm.
focused on IR and how with the current MUN you're involved with being directly involved with, the actual governmental organizations. Do you, uh, so I think your path in regards to sort of the academic connection is quite linear. But I think
Hmm.
the big sales point of MUN is, especially the high school level, would be the skills you gain, right? So in
Hmm.
what ways do you feel like what type of skill sets do you think MUN helps provide students, especially in the age of AI?
Sure. I mean, especially I guess in terms of AI, it means a lot. I think that's a very good question. I think when I try to classify what kinds of benefits Model UN bring to students, I think you can classify into three different areas. Number one is research. Number two is uh, writing, and number three is speaking. I guess speaking is the most obvious part, so I'll just try to talk it at the very last. But when it comes to research, first of all, for me right now, I'm a full-time researcher. Well, grad school means a lot of researching, but at the same time, I've been working as a research assistant for the Korea University Institute on economic and technological security. So what we do is we try to look into areas of security which are not covered by traditional security. Traditional security means like guns and tanks and fighter jets. Non-traditional security, like economic and technological security, things like supply chain, AI, and drones, and all that kind of emerging threat against South Korea. And in doing so, we need to have a very strong research background. And I think what Model UN really enables people to do and enables people to have is being able to do research in a high intensity situation. And what I mean by high intensity is you're competing for something. Through research, you're trying to gain something out of it. So I think whenever I do Model UN, I try to really do a lot of research, and it really gives me that drive. I guess the big incentive is obviously awards, but because if you want to represent your country well in Model UN, you need to do very intensive research. So it gives that uh, strong drive to uh, work on doing research, and I think that really helped me out a lot whenever whenever I work as a research assistant, because you're able to bring out steadfast, good quality research all the time. And I think that's only possible through Model UN. Big thing. The other is writing. In Model UN, I think like especially when you do unmoderated caucuses in GA committees,
Mm,
you have to write resolution fast because you want to go ahead and like get selected. You want your resolution to be selected by the chair faster than anyone else.
mm,
So I think in terms of writing, you are able to be exposed to professional writing
mm,
from a very, very early age. And this is important, I think, especially if you want to take a profession of research or take a profession in grad school.
mm.
Because in grad school, everything is you need to write fast
Yeah.
in English professionally without any kinds of error. And I think Model UN really enables you to do that, especially if you participate in like UNA USA committees where you have to do writing on the spot during unmoderated caucuses. And lastly, I think in terms of speaking, I think it's more like this is more vocational rather than research or academic, but uh when you do Model UN, you try to negotiate, you try to gain the consensus, generate consensus, and persuade others on the goal that you want others to follow. And I think that really comes in handy in a business setting
Mm,
where if you go ahead and try to present your ideas in front of like corporate executives, or you're trying to do sales, for example, I think that Model UN experience gives a very competitive advantage because you're able to simulate how people think and how people are persuaded by your ideas, and you get to know the logical and the procedural ways on how to persuade others from a very early age. So I think in those three areas, Model UN really helped me out a lot, and I've been harnessing those advantages, I think, almost on an everyday basis.
So when it comes to AI, it's interesting because I've organized over 20, and you might have
Hmm.
be more than me, right? Of the 70 conferences you're involved, I presume you
Hmm.
were on the organizing side for at least half of them.
Hmm.
Um, what does it look like now in regards to sort of the guardrails or the rules that are placed in regards to the use of AI? So like,
Hmm.
Yeah, like with the conference that you're running, for example, what does that look like in regards to delegates? Is there just a total ban, or is there like you may use it like this, but not like this? What does that look like exactly?
So when I did Model UN during high school, we were not allowed to use electronic devices, only except when we were doing unmoderated caucuses,
Mm.
and when we were writing resolutions. Now, those kinds of bans, I think, are being lifted because we've come at a point where you can't conduct an actual Model UN conference without allowing students to use AI.
Mm. And
I
also
think,
tech,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Tech and AI. I think, on the benefit side, first of all, I think what AI allows people to do is being able to collect information that took you like hours, 2 hours to collect within a second. And I think those kind of things are really beneficial, especially like, for example, you can go onto ChatGPT, ask, oh, I'm the delegate of Argentina, and I'm talking about this particular agenda. So can you try to do me research on this particular agenda? And it gives you the Argentinian perspective
Mm.
on that issue in 2 to 5 seconds. So I think in terms of that, it allows students to be able to save time really quickly. But simultaneously, you get students to rely too much on that. So I think Mr. Harris, especially, you'll remember me preparing for conferences, making 200, 300 page binders.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say
And
the mid 2010s was probably what
yeah.
I would say the last phase of binders, right? Because I don't
Hmm.
even see big binders, and if I
Hmm.
do, it's almost like they're wasting time, right? Because it's less like because you got to like go through, you got to
Exactly.
go through these
Yeah.
pages when someone else has it. But
Hmm.
yeah, so would you say? A question I have for you, and maybe is maybe even a bigger question, is the paradigm shift. Because I recall, so I graduated in 2005, right? My wedding was 20. I got married in 2018 or so. And the reason I bring up my
Hmm.
wedding is I recall around that period, I started seeing a lot more of this, where
Hmm.
students for conferences, like when they're reading their notes, as well as at weddings, people were using their phones to read stuff. And I remember thinking, oh, that looks kind of tacky. But then in the last 3, 4 years, this has become the norm, right? You
Hmm.
go to 95% of weddings, people under the age of 35 are using their phones. So I'm wondering in the same way, are we seeing a paradigm shift with committees with computers? Because as you know, my style too was no computers for a chunk of the conference. But do you think maybe I'm a bit outdated? What's your
There is
opinion?
a big paradigm shift. Yes, there's a big paradigm shift. I think more and more committees, conferences are allowing people to use AI, not because they think AI is good, it's because they can't control it
Mm,
anymore. Like you can't distinguish between AI generated speech, and
mm,
actual speeches. You really can't in a conference setting. So I don't think like I think there will be a and there is a paradigm shift. But at the same time, if you ask me, then are students who are not able to win best delegates in conferences able to get awards because of AI? Then I don't really think so. The
mm,
reason behind it is because there are students who are able to use AI, harness those power,
mm,
and be very creative about it and are very intellectual and they go ahead and use AI to the best of their abilities and gain that award, gain their incentive.
mm,
But you can quickly distinguish those who use AI. They maybe make one or two speeches, deliver a perfect speech using AI, and
mm,
then after that they go silent. So what I'm saying here is AI is getting us very close to a paradigm shift, but there still is a pretty big human factor
mm,
on how like conferences run because it's not about how AIs are able to change Model UN. It's all about how AIs are able to help students
mm.
who are already good in Model UN get much better in Model UN.
Yeah, that's a great point because when you look at the profile of a best delegate,
Hmm.
it's still the same profile from a student that was winning 15 years ago, right? They're good public
Hmm.
speakers, good at negotiating, but you're saying it's more along the lines of leveraging. Who's able to leverage it versus those who, as you said, they have a perfect opening speech. And they submit a resolution that they can't defend because they don't know the words, what the words mean. You are probably one of the most involved people in the Korea circuit, which is what I would consider one of the best circuits in the world, right? When I think best circuits in
Hmm.
the world, I think of America, I think of Korea, China, and India. So in the Korean circuit, what would you say kind of differentiates it from the American circuit since you've experienced both? And secondly, I know it's kind of hard to narrow it down, but what conferences do you recommend to high school students if they had to, pick some conferences to attend this year?
If I would choose like a conference that high school students should participate in, number one is obviously Jackman. And
Mm.
it's not because you and I were a part of it, but it's
Yeah.
like objectively, even after you left, Jackman became a very, very big name
Mm.
in Model UN. Why? Uh, 2 days ago, I was advising for this high school level, Model UN. I was an advisor. And I went there, I met this Cass Pongo student who, and she wanted to go to Georgetown, by the way. And we were like talking, we were like, oh, like you went to Cass Pongo, I went to Cass Jeju, and like we're talking. And, she was talking about how like her Jackman experience was very nice. And if you recall, KS Pango, SFS, SIS, they were very proud about them running Somun
Yeah.
in COEX and Kintex. But now Jackman is the bigger name. So I think that's definitely one thing. And especially given the sense that it's one of the only conferences in Korea that is able to provide a crisis modeling and experience. And I think in this day and age where the United Nations is no longer a big power player, but you see more bilateralism, multilateralism, and fragmentation of international politics, crisis committees are actually very, very good ways on how to experience this global political situation landscape after Donald Trump and after 2020. One or two other conferences, I think most definitely during the winter, Cayman, Korea Model UN,
Mm.
hosted by Korea University. They actually hosted at the building where I work. They're
Okay.
doing their summer conferences today,
For the
actually.
record, I always say Seoul is still the biggest in Korea. Whenever people ask me
Hmm.
what's the biggest conference, I usually say Seoul. And then yeah,
Hmm.
then K-mun, Y-mun, but go
Hmm.
on. Jackman is a great conference though.
Yeah, yeah, Cayman. Yeah, I'll talk about that in a bit. I'll make it very quick. But like Cayman is one thing, Wyman is the other. Those kind of conferences are good because you're able to experience Model UN in a very Korean context with ample resources
Mm.
because they're hosted by Korean universities and they're hosted by students, undergraduate students from Korean universities. So it gives you that good exposure. And I guess when it comes to someone, in my personal opinion, I think them keeping up with this traditional Model UN structure at the moment. I'm not sure if they've like verged into crisis committees or anything, but keeping up with Diamond, keeping up this with this traditional Model UN structure, I think in my personal opinion it's a bit outdated. And it's really because, as I said, uh traditional Model UN and GA committees do not give you that exposure that you need in a post-COVID international political landscape. We are in this situation where the United Nations is becoming a relic of the past. You are looking at the United Nations Security Council, and everyone says that it's the highest international body to maintain international peace and security, is unable to do anything when stuff happen in Ukraine and Gaza. And most of the things are happening bilaterally or multilaterally amongst individual countries.
if I'm understanding what you're trying to say, it's that sort of this traditional UN structure of like 40, 50 countries coming together to discuss refugees, for
Mhm.
example. It's not that that's unimportant, but what you're saying is in the real world, right, of bilateral, multilateral politics, a situation that you might see like in a crisis committee, or perhaps kind of in between, which would be specialized committees, let's say, is far more realistic. And you feel like conferences like JECMUN are very good in the sense that it kind of provides that type of different experience.
Yeah, well, I personally think, well, more and more as we, like, the international relations scholars and the scholarship, like, when we, try to debate about this issue, we more and more believe that the UN
Mm,
is now really geared towards the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and, like, development and human rights. In those aspects, yes, but when it comes to security, well,
mm,
I guess I'm more biased because I'm majoring in international security and doing my thesis on those. Uh, the United Nations and its instruments for international peace and security do not really do that much of a job compared to like 10 years ago when I did Model UN, because like back then the UN Security Council gathered and like the US, Russia, all these countries would gather around to fight ISIS
mm,
and fight combat terrorism. That was the big issue. Now it's a US China competition, US Russia competition, or issues in like the Israel Palestine conflict. Those kind of things where like the permanent five countries are related. So the Security Council isn't really doing much of the job compared to a long time ago. In such situation, we see like in crisis committees, we try to simulate things like government cabinets
mm,
or like, for example, other big organizations like NATO
mm,
or such kinds of committees outside the context of UN. And
mm,
I think those kinds of committees really expose high school students to the idea that the United Nations is not really everything, and there are many ways to solve international crises.
mm,
So that's why I thought that in such aspects, students should be more exposed to conferences where they have this kind of non-UN crisis committee settings.
mm. So you're saying those structural issues, especially like the one committee, right, that has what we could say sort of more rights than other committees, the UNSC, because of
Hmm.
the bureaucratic red tape of like the P5. Essentially,
Hmm.
nothing's happening. So you're like, well, why constrain ourselves then to the UN?
Hmm.
Let's expand. I think that's a great point. And
Hmm.
as we sort of wrap up this podcast, I think the last question I would have for you would be, why should every school have a good MUN program?
Hmm. Uh, well, I think the big reason why all schools, especially international schools, I think the reason why they should have a good Model UN program is mostly because it gives students the opportunity to find their talent outside a traditional school setting. And what that means is in a school setting, I don't know, maybe it's more because I come from an Asian country, it's more competition, competition, competition. And you always try to fight for things like grades, for example. And it's more of like I think it's not like a multiplayer kind of thing. It's a situation where you are in the single player situation, you have to compete with others. But I think in Model UN, you try to get to realize that in after you graduate from high school, after you graduate college, you go into jobs, you go into like your actual profession, you sometimes need to collaborate with other people. And you sometimes need to discuss with other people to come up with an effective solution on certain issues. And I think that Model UN prepares you towards that,
Mhm,
given that it gives you the ability to research things to come with that solution. It gives you the eloquent ability to write and express your own ideas on how you want to propose such kind of solution. And it gives you these speaking abilities to persuade others to go ahead and persuade others that you think your solution is right. And also discuss with others, debate with others on what the best solution is going to be. And I think those kind of extracurricular opportunities that Model UN give really helps out students a lot after they graduate from like high school, even college, actually. More and more, I think that I'm using what I learned in Model UN, not in like a school setting, even in collegiate settings,
Mm,
but more when I work, more when I go ahead and try to talk with others. For me, after I graduate from graduate school, my goal is to go into the sales
mm.
industry, defense sales and acquisition. And in terms of that, I think what I learned in Model UN really helps me out a lot. So I think given that unique opportunity that Model UN provides, something that you can only get outside the classroom, I think that's why every school should have a Model UN program to prepare students when they graduate and when they go ahead and get a job and try to succeed in life.
Yeah, I totally concur with that perspective that real life is different from school, right?
Hmm.
You're not getting grades and,
Hmm.
as you said earlier, just the importance of collaboration, right? It's very rare to be in a position where it's just you and, you need that ability to work with others.
Hmm.
So on that note, thank you so much for joining episode 3 of MUN Deep Dive. So one of our Korea MUN experts, and really beyond that, because you were also a Georgetown MUNer. Appreciate to catch up with you, Dennis, and good luck with everything you do, especially that conference. When is the conference coming up again?
It's going to be on November 14th to the 15th, as I recall. And yeah, like once students are able to get an award, they get an opportunity to go to Ethiopia, actually. Like they give you a full ride trip to Ethiopia. This March I went on it, and it was a pretty good experience. So I think a lot more and more students are joining in and trying to compete. This year, when I went to the orientations, so many students they're working very hard to compete already.
Sounds like an awesome opportunity. And
Hmm.
yeah, sort of the grand finale of your 11-year MUN career. And who knows, right? You might be involved
Yeah.
in some capacity or
Yeah.
other in the future.
Hmm.
And on that note, that wraps up episode 3. Thank you so much. This was Dennis Kim.
Well, thanks for having me.